rand in investments by 306 billion rand, overachieving the target by 26%. These investments will go a long way in stimulating economic activity and creating jobs. We've also played an active role in the development of international human rights and humanitarian law. South Africa was elected to serve on the UN Human Rights Council for a 3-year term, starting in January 23. This is our 3rd term on the HRC, having successfully served previously on the Council. We've also been government in the establishment of the African Union and have taken on leadership roles at various levels of the continental organization. In 2002, President Thabo Mbeki served as the inaugural chair of the African Union, and from 2012 to 2017, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma served as the AU Commission chair. From February 2020 to 21, our president served as African Union chair, and South Africa chaired the African Union's Peace and Security Council on numerous occasions. President Ramaphosa chaired the African Union at a very difficult time as the world was combating the coronavirus. South Africa was praised by the World Health Organization for the strategies it devised to deal with the pandemic. As chair of the Union, President Ramaphosa appointed special envoys to mobilize international economic support for the continental fight against COVID and established the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. By August 21, the team had managed to secure 400 million vaccine doses for African countries, despite hoarding by the North. Of course, there are many on the benches in opposition who wish to pretend that there was no such thing as COVID, that it didn't affect us severely socially as well as economically. Our country played a major role in the fight to make COVID vaccines more accessible to the developing South. We couldn't get vaccines till President Ramaphosa intervened. South Africa and India argued effectively for a temporary TRIPS waiver at the World Trade Organization to enable developing countries to manufacture COVID vaccines and therapeutics. We faced huge resistance from the rich developed countries, but we won a partial temporary waiver. As a result, in 2021, the African Union heads of state established the Partnerships for Africa Vaccine Manufacturing under the Africa CDC. The Africa CDC is working with 4 other national regulatory authorities to boost capacity to manufacture 60% of vaccine needs in Africa by 2040, for the first time ever for Africa, and South Africa led the way. In June last year, the WHO made reference to how South Africa managed its response to the pandemic despite the many challenges. Dr. Ryan at the WHO said South Africa used its initial lockdown very well and put in place a 4-point plan for preparedness and response. He said the deployment of mobile laboratories across the country was a huge innovation, and the training of 30,000 community health workers to do contact tracing and testing was effective. He lauded South Africa for its swift technological response, which allowed it to develop COVID-19 testing capacity early on and assist other countries on the continent to test for cases. Of course, none of this will be mentioned by the opposition. South Africa has capitalized on its membership in important multilateral organizations such as the G20 and BRICS to advance the priorities of the African Union's Agenda 2063, our continent's development blueprint. We've played a significant role in the development of continental infrastructure, the procurement and development of vaccines, in science and innovation, and we are determined to play an even larger role in the second 10-year implementation plan of Agenda 2063. But of course, we still have a long way to go, as President said, despite major successes. Our country has been playing a role in advancing peace and security on the African continent for many years, from the 2003 Sun City unity talks for the Democratic Republic of Congo to 2021 signing off of the Pretoria Agreement between the federal government of Ethiopia and the TPLF. We are a country and government that is doing. We've made also a noticeable impact in our country in science and innovation on the world stage. In fact, Mr. President, I don't recall you saying Tinswalo was a factory worker. Did you say that? I don't remember, and I was wondering, why is it when it's a young black woman referred to that the only career she might have is factory worker? I found that odd. Nonetheless, in the space of science, innovation, and intellectual development, we are very proud internationally of Dr. Chiliji Marwala of the UN University. He was appointed in August 2023 and serves on the UN's Scientific Advisory Council. He wouldn't have had that opportunity had we not had democracy, because we know that Honorable Dutoy would have prevented it from happening. Dr. Marwala served as Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, is a specialist in artificial intelligence, in computer science, and is also a qualified mechanical engineer. This male Tinswalo is not a factory worker whose factory is closing. We also have a further list of world award winners. Black women scientists. We celebrate Professor Tebelo Nyokong, who is Rhodes University's director of the Institute of Nanotechnology Innovation. She's received many global awards for her research on photodynamic therapy of cancer and on eliminating antimicrobial resistance. If the Honorable Steenhuisen had said Tinswalo was a physicist who lost her job, I would have said transformation is happening, but a factory worker, no. The pioneering research of Professor Nyokong is paving the way for safer cancer detection and treatment without the debilitating effects of chemotherapy. Last year, Pope Francis appointed Professor Nyokong to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. And then we have Sinamile Masango, who is a nuclear physicist and an esteemed scholar who presents her work on some of the biggest science stages in the world. She mentors young girls in science through her foundation and has declared she wishes to be the first African woman to travel to space, not for the moonshot, but to shoot it down. Our country, Honorable Chairperson, has a myriad of influential, talented minds, and we are proud that they represent South Africa so well. Some of these inimitable minds comprised our world-class team of international law advocates who presented our case to the International Court of Justice last month on Israel's genocide in Gaza. I was absolutely shocked at Honorable Nodada suggesting leave the genocide and focus on your domestic issues. I find it horrifying that is the future South African we have. People worldwide have hailed South Africa's case before the ICJ and the finding of the court that there's of genocide. This has had reverberations worldwide. The case is particularly significant in that the ICJ is seized by such an important matter of peace and security, where it is a country of the South that is asking the world's highest court to hold a country of the North accountable for their violations of the Geneva Convention. We all know that provisional measures were set out by the court. We all know that the silence of the Democratic Alliance has been deafening. We all know that the Western Cape government on 10th March 2022, through their premier, referred to Ukraine in the following way: we cannot and will not remain silent in the face of a major international crisis that threatens the very foundation of our liberal international order. Premier, Western Cape, Honorable Nodada, about Ukraine. But today you say we must ignore genocide in Palestine. We are embarrassed by you.
Honorable Minister, your time has now expired.
And that is International Relations and Cooperation Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor. This as MPs have been debating the President's State of the Nation address. Some of what she says is that Tinzwalo, you know, this is a name that has been bandied about since the President's State of the Nation address, will vote the ANC. That's what she says. And she also talks about the foreign policy of South Africa, that over the last 30 years, this is a policy that has been punching above its weight, particularly when it comes to developments around the globe. She also mentions, of course, the AU Commission chair, as you've seen, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma at some point occupying that chair. But then she also talks about the recent ICJ case, as some of the MPs have been saying that South Africa should have focused on its own domestic problems. But these, of course, are some of the issues that have been raised in Parliament as various political parties were picking apart the State of the Nation address. So we'll have more for you on this particular story, and Sophie Mokwe, our international news editor, will also be here to talk about South Africa's fresh letter to the International Court of Justice. We'll talk about that with her and look at some of the interventions that South Africa now seeks, particularly as the situation in Rafah continues to escalate.